Hello and welcome everybody. Crafting in Everspace 2 is one of the more complex systems and can provide you with excellent equipment and the ability to modify a lot of items to your liking. In this guide we will take a deep dive into the following aspects: how to craft, resource gathering, the different ways to obtain blueprints and what you can craft, catalysts to modify your weapons and equipment, and then we will talk about if crafting is worth it and when you should craft and modify what. We need to take a brief look on how equipment rarity works before we start. The system is very much like in Diablo. You have 4 basic rarities and you will get automatically more higher rarity items the higher your individual level is. And the higher the rarity, the better the base stats of an item are, and even more important, the more perks or special abilities an item brings to the table. So first of all, let's take a look on how it is done and organized in Everspace 2. If you hover over an empty inventory slot, you will get the according button prompt that brings you to the crafting menu, or you select it directly in your overview. Here you can switch between two options: craft or modify. Beside the obvious crafting of new shiny stuff, you can also, to an extent, modify your equipment and weapons. You can also access the modify options for an item directly by hovering over it in your inventory and follow the button prompt. This is the fastest and most efficient way to get there. The modification options include increasing rarity, increasing level, removing level restrictions, and adding catalysts, which we will cover later in a dedicated section. Sounds great, right? But hold your horses, there are restrictions. You can, for example, only increase the level of an item once, and it can't exceed the player's level. And for increasing the rarity, you first need a bunch of materials that you get by disassembling, more on that in the next section, equipment that already has this higher rarity. So during the leveling process, you are only occasionally able to bump the rarity of an item. And there's another catch: by the time this guide is made, you can't increase the rarity of crafted items. Removing level restrictions can be very useful during the leveling phase, because you will bump occasionally into items that are above your own level and therefore unusable until you reach that level. Removing the level restrictions can give you access to powerful weapons and equipment early. Now, how do we get materials to craft items? Firstly, you can dismantle unused or old equipment, and you should always do that. Don't sell surplus equipment and weapons, just dismantle them. To be able to do that, you need a special equipment, the cargo unit. So don't scratch your head at the beginning how to dismantle. You first need a basic cargo unit that you can buy or find very early in the game. Once you equip one, you will get a button prompt when you hover over weapons or equipment in your inventory. The items you get by dismantling cannot be gathered in any other way and are essential for crafting and modifying. Secondly, you simply gather materials by mining resource nodes. And mining in this game means simply shooting at them. There are no mining lasers or special equipment for that. You also can't sell mined resources, these are exclusively used for crafting. There is a weapon modifier in the game that boosts your mining yield though, and the best weapon to mine nodes is a flak, because that is usually just one hit to mine the whole resource node. So if you stumble over a flak with the mining modifier, just keep it. You can switch weapons anytime from your inventory. Later, you will be able to add the modifier yourself. We come back to that in the catalyst section. As a general rule of thumb, if you enjoy keeping your gear in the best possible condition during the leveling process, dismantle every piece of unused equipment and hunt down at least most of the resource nodes in an area. This should provide enough materials to craft and modify at least key parts of your weapons and equipment. You will also encounter various quality of life improvements while following the main story. I will not spoil anything here, but some perks are bound to companions you will encounter while progressing through the story. So at a later stage, you will be able to identify the locations where you can find the exact materials you are looking for very easily on the map. Resource nodes also appear in randomly created areas like encounters, jobs, and high-risk areas, so you have unlimited access to them. This leads us to the next point on the list: how to obtain blueprints and what you can craft. This section excludes modifications and catalysts, which will be covered afterwards. You can craft every piece of equipment for your according slots and every weapon in the game up to the superior quality level. At the moment, you can't craft legendary items. That might change later or in a DLC. You can also craft consumables and components, the latter being only used to install catalysts and serve as a kind of refining mechanic to bundle basic materials into a more complex component that then is needed for some advanced crafting. You can either learn blueprints by dismantling 3 items of the same kind, say beam lasers for example. This learned blueprint only applies to the according rarity level, so you have to learn each blueprint for every rarity. Or you can simply loot blueprints from enemies, hidden containers, and so on. Every piece of equipment and every weapon base type can come in different variants, like a beam laser with more range, an energy core with higher output for weapon energy, and so on. You cannot craft these specific variants. You will randomly receive a basic or special variant when crafting. Blueprints for catalysts are obtainable by accomplishing high-risk areas. The rarity modifier of the high-risk area, uncommon, rare, and superior, determines which rarity level these blueprints can have at best. But you can find lower level blueprints in high-risk areas with a higher rarity. Speaking of catalysts, let's move on into that section. Apart from your always available basic modifications described in the how to craft section of this video, you will gather blueprints for catalysts that also come at the 4 rarity levels. These catalysts can vastly improve performance of an item or a weapon, like 20% increased shield capacity or increasing a weapon's energy damage by 25%. There are also some utility options like increased mining quality. Once applied, you cannot detach a catalyst, so it is a one-use only item. Make sure the equipment or weapon you attach it to is worth it. When you salvage an item with a catalyst later, you will not be refunded any of the materials from the catalyst. At the moment, there are no catalysts available for legendary items or any modifications possible on these items. This might change later, but don't expect it for the regular 1.0 release. In general, are catalysts a very impactful crafting mechanic that can severely enhance your performance, but also consume a considerable amount of resources, so you should be careful if you want to spend these resources on an item that will be outleveled very soon. Which leads us nicely into the last segment of this video. Is crafting and modifying worth it, and when and where to use it in the game? If you play very thorough during the leveling process, dismantling all unused equipment and gathering most resource nodes, then you should be able to improve equipment or craft some items on a regular base. I would not recommend updating all gear all the time, because you level fast at the beginning and you will find plenty of loot. That said, you might want to stick to that cool gun with that nice perk just a little bit longer, and modifying it or attaching a catalyst allows for exactly that. Equipment like cargo units, sensors and boosters are not that crucial, and I would only craft these if you have an abundance of materials, which can be the case depending on your individual playstyle. But I also think that equipment like the energy core is very much worth updating and keeping it up to your level. Nothing more frustrating than running out of juice for your guns in the middle of a heated debate in outer space. So I would prioritize your equipment as follows: energy core first and foremost, then shields and plating, sensors, cargo units and boosters only if you have a surplus of materials. Remember, there are different variants in the game and you can't craft a specific variant. So a lower level energy core with the more weapon energy variant might still be better than the basic version at your level. For weapons, crafting during the leveling process can fill the gap if you're not able to obtain the kind of weapon type you like through looting for your level. You also don't need to always keep your weapons at the maximum level, but as a rule of thumb, I wouldn't let them fall more than 2 levels behind. The common catalysts are usually easy to craft and can be applied frequently, but I would only use premium catalysts occasionally during the leveling phase. Remember, once you reach maximum level, you will want to craft superior equipment, weapons and catalysts, and maybe even for multiple ships that are focused on different roles and weapons. So be especially mindful with the resources needed for superior crafting and the materials for the rare catalysts, because these contain the best weapon modifiers at the moment. Overall is crafting a very impactful and well-balanced mechanic with not too much grind attached to it, as long as you're not trying to craft everything new at every level. Although the mining mechanic is very shallow, it also means you don't have to spend hours looking at a mining laser cutting through an asteroid. It is more like an intergalactic drive-through where you order the moment you started from home and collect your meal while flying past the counter at full speed. And on maximum level, you can really tinker around to maximize your performance and significantly enhance your weapons and equipment. A worthwhile mechanic that also respects your time. If you have any more questions about crafting, let me know in the comments. What other guides and tutorials you would like to see for Everspace 2? There's more to come on this channel, so make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out. For now, this is all about Everspace 2. Take good care of yourself and fly safe.